Argentina has the most dollar reserves or most physical dollars outside of the United States. I believe the number I saw is $250 billion stuffed into mattresses and stuff like that to protect them from the incredible inflation of the peso.
Do you know what the inflation rate was last year before Milei got in?
I believe the number was 230%.
Yeah, I had read similar numbers to that because it's very interesting. A lot of clients who I work with, they're very concerned about de-dollarization and the dollar crashing. And it's like, yes, those are legit concerns. But when you compare that to some of the neighboring countries' currencies, we're very happy to have US dollars. For example, I live here in Panama, which is a US dollar economy, and I would rather have US dollars than Venezuelan Bolivia or Argentinian pesos or, some of these other currencies that we see in Latin America that just lose value at such an alarming rate.
Right. You're not afraid of dollarization, and which is on the table for Argentina. And what more the libertarian or right has been trying to do for a long time in Argentina is to actually get off the peso because it's been abused for 100 years. And which is some of the difficult things that they're dealing with now is you have 100 years of mismanagement. How do you change it so that even if bad people get into power, they don't totally destroy the economy? So that's one reason they want to get rid of the peso and replace it with the dollar. And why I think as bad as the dollar is, it's an improvement over the peso.
100%. I think that, well, as speaking as a libertarian or as an ANCAP, I believe that people should be able to transact in whatever currency they want. And I definitely am a fan of having more options, not less options. Dollarization is a step in the right direction, but open it up to Bitcoin, open it up to Swiss francs, open it up to any other currency that people want to transact in. I'm all for it.
And when we get into Milei, that's exactly what he's doing. He supports a competition of currencies similar to what Hayek proposed, and the denationalization of money. And the dollar is just the winner because Argentina is already dollarized. All big purchases and houses and cars, anything of substantial size is in dollars because nobody would give you $10,000 worth of pesos. That's insane. Because that it's going to lose its value in a month by 20%. So nobody uses that. So the country is already dollarized. But Milei's plan is to use, like, for example, if you're in Misiones near Brazilian border, probably going to use the Brazilian real, much more accepted currency there. If you're near Chile and Mendoza or La Rioja, you're likely going to use much more. I mean, probably accept dollars, but the Chilean peso will be used. So it's which is a much stronger currency than so. That is basically the thing. The objective. And Milei is actually very pro Bitcoin and crypto, and he has reiterated that many times.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out because I know that he was definitely running on a lot of the ideas of dollarization and a closure of the central bank in Argentina. But it seems that he's taken a slight pause on those types of things to get his house in order and try to pull down or push down the inflation in the country first. Do you think once he gets that under control, which if he does, by the way, is monumental, is absolutely massive. If he can get that's no small feat. But if he is able to accomplish that, do you think that dollarization will come back on the table?
Yes. He's already allowed all currencies to be settled. You can make contracts in any currency you want. So from crypto to dollars, but he hasn't got rid of the central bank, partly because it has so many liabilities on its books that they have to pay to other people. They had basically a Ponzi scheme in their central banks called this LELIX situation, where Argentines know better than anybody that inflation is caused by printing money. They know better than anybody. They won't admit it, of course, but they know better than anybody. And they created like a Ponzi scheme where they kept a lot of that money that they printed in the central bank and then would give out interest. And this was peso denominated security or debt. Problem is, as inflation gets worse and worse, they kept it having to double and double the interest that they were paying. And it was getting to the point that this interest, why it was a Ponzi scheme, was doubling every month was doubling doubling the monetary supply. So that's what Milei had to deal with, and that's what as he entered office. So he has to unwind all these liabilities in the central bank before he can make any really move. Because let's say that he goes, okay, we're going to open all the banking system, even though we don't have any dollars. Argentina had negative $12 billion negative 12 billion in foreign reserves, meaning they owed 12 billion more than they actually had when Milei took office. So we're going to dollarize. We're going to open our banks up so people can use the banking system to get dollars and pay in dollars. Well, but the inflation's still high. Well, what's going to happen is there's going to be a run on the bank, and inflation is just there's going to be hyperinflation. So he couldn't really dollarize or move or abolish the central bank right away, or totally unrig the system right away. He had to get his house in order. He had to increase his foreign reserves. He had to cut spending, cut monetary emission in order to get the economy stable enough where they can start opening up the bank and get enough dollars so that there won't be a run on the bank. So get inflation lower enough and then get enough dollars so that there isn't going to be a run on the banks. So this is what he's doing right now. And when he's able to open up the economy so people can accept dollars or accept different foreign currency, then that's when he can start getting into the process of closing the central bank.
Do you think it'll actually happen, though?
I think he really would like to, yes. He actually had a plan to do it right away, but that plan would have gotten him impeached. Because it would have involved selling all of the government liabilities. So they would have to sell all the government liabilities and accepted dollars for them. The problem is they would have had to sell them at rock bottom prices. And the government, and then he would have been criticized. Oh, you're selling all the government, assets. You're selling all the government assets for rock bottom prices, and you're selling the country. And he believed it was politically infeasible, so that's why he didn't do it. If he would have won with a huge majority in the first round, which he didn't, people forget that he actually lost the first round. He lost. Sergio Massa beat him. And he won in the second round. So it's not like he has this huge political majority in the Congress. He doesn't. In fact, he
only has 6 seats or something like that?
In the Senate, Milei only has 7 seats. In the House, he started out with 38. They've actually grown a little bit. Some people have switched to their side. But it's his party, La Libertad Avanza, which is basically like they're libertarians or conservatarians. They're pretty libertarian. And his party, La Libertad Avanza, has such a minority. I forget exactly. It's 38 out of, I think it's 275, if my memory serves me. So that's a pretty small, and then 7 out of 72. So less than 10% of the Senate. So it's not like he had a lot of authority just to pass every law that he wanted.
Well, a couple of the things that he was able to do was start cutting spending immediately. Like,
Right.
his famous quotes of him with a chainsaw to everything. I mean, he's literally gone in there and cut spending. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Right. And he cut spending with no legislation. It was only like last week, 6 months into his presidency, or 2 weeks ago, that he actually passed any legislation. So how was he able to cut spending? And some of the reasons he was able to cut spending is he seems to have Argentina presidents have a little bit more control over the executive branch in some regards. So that famous clip of him going afuera, afuera, afuera. I didn't know when he got elected that he would actually be. I thought he had to go through the legislative process and to do this, but no. It was within hours of him being president. He cut the ministries in half. So I think there are 18 ministries, and he cut them to 9. And then
Do you have a couple of examples of which ones he got rid of? Because I think it's very interesting.
He got rid of the Ministry of Women, Gender, and Diversity, which he got rid of that one totally. Some of the other ones he kind of combined with other ones. He downsized them and combined them, but he got rid of that one totally. And that one, I mean, if you watch what that one did over the Kirchner government, holy moly, like what a waste of money, cringe-worthy stuff. So that's one he got rid of. That's the most famous one. But they had a Ministry of Sports and Tourism. Like, you need a Ministry of Sports and Tourism. They had a Ministry of Culture. They had a Ministry of Education, which Milei says propaganda. It's like the Ministry of Education, afuera. Oh, I mean propaganda. It's a really funny part. And a lot of them, Ministry of Culture. So Ministry of Health, he got rid of. He kept some of the functions, and he put them in the Ministry of Human Capital, which is a ministry to try to help people become more productive in Argentina, essentially, through the private sector. So he was able to get rid of a lot of these. The Ministry of Infrastructure. Afuera, no infrastructure from the federal level. His goal is to actually have the provinces do all the infrastructure. So like you handle your own stuff. So and so that he got and he was able to lower the amount of political appointments. So he's just like, I'm just not going to hire new people to fill these spots. Mm-hmm. He enacted you have to be at your desk. So you have to show up to work, the Elon Musk thing, and a bunch of people didn't show up to work. And Argentina has this thing where somebody will get into the government, maybe they'll go on maternity leave, and then they just get paid forever. Or they hire,
never come back to work, and your cousin, your brother, your dog gets a job, and it's like they all get a salary.
Exactly.
Nobody actually does anything. It's so bloated, the whole organization.
Right. Absolutely. Famously, one of the huge Malay enemies, the mayor of Buenos Aires, of Caba, hired this pretty 18-year-old to be his secretary, and it had this like crazy title. And it was like his girl. It was actually like his girlfriend. He got a job. So that's a thing. That's a thing that happened. And Milei has a funny line. He's like, first they hire their wives, then they hire their mistresses, then they hire their mistresses' families, and by the end, there's no money for the people. So he got rid of a lot of that. He ended all the public works. So this was something that is centrally planned by the government, and what causes so much of the corruption, billions of dollars are stolen through public works since the Christina Kirchner. Got rid of that, cut it out entirely. I think at least 97%. He cut out a lot of, they were able to find a lot of fraudulent welfare spending. stuff like giving money to people that have yachts, giving money to people that travel abroad, that sort of thing. Cut out a lot of the extra cars. And I mean, there was just so much that he could cut. And it was like every week, especially, and it's still happening, where there would be something like Inaki, which is like they have this thought Inati, which is like this thought police, which was Institute Against Homophobia, Xenophobia, Sexism. I can't remember all the acronyms, but that's exactly what it was. He got rid of that. And it keeps going. My favorite thing that Milei did was this. He gave a speech, and it was an address to Congress. It was like the State of the Union speech by the president.
Sure.
And Milei did this in grand faction. I actually think it saved his presidency. But during that speech, he goes, "I'm going to close Telem." And he actually packed the place with his people, and they must have known it. The crowd just erupted. Well, what is Telem? Telem is like their NPR that they've had for 80 years. So he's going to close Telem. And then it's like, okay, so when? So 2 days later, in the middle of the night, he has people board up Telem so nobody can get into Telem. And he gets rid of the website and everything. And it's just like it was a propaganda. It was a government funded news agency, pure propaganda, actually extremely cultish. If you work there, it was really bizarre. And he just boarded it up, and it was gone, afuera. And that was my favorite thing he did. It was pretty based. So there's a lot of things that he's done like that that didn't require. And the biggest thing that he probably did is he cut off all transfers to the provinces. So discretionary transfers. So they wouldn't pass his immediately after becoming president. He signed a deregulatory DNU, which is necessary and decree of necessity and urgency, which was actually strengthened by the socialist government. So they gave Milei a lot of power to actually deregulate the economy. And he signed that immediately, I think within the first week. And then within a couple weeks, he had this grand omnibus bill, which was the most libertarian bill in the history. And they rejected his bill. They basically backstabbed him at the last minute. And in response to that, because this was gonna cut spending, this was gonna do a lot, like allow people to defend themselves, allow homeschooling to happen, stuff like this. And they rejected this bill. So Milei says, okay. And they thought it was going to ruin Milei, actually. This was their attempt to ruin Milei. And Milei said, I don't care. I'm going to cut all the discretionary transfers to the provinces. I'm not going to give them a penny to the provinces. And so that's what he did. He's cut discretionary transfers, 97%. You're supposed to give a certain amount, but above that amount is the discretionary amount. And Milei cut that 97%. And that allowed him to balance the budget. That's why everybody talks about it. Oh, he was able to balance the budget. He just cut all the he's like, you guys are going to have to make your own cuts. And if you watch the last 20 years, the provinces have absolutely dramatically increased public employees and everything else, some by over 100%. And some of them have like 70%, like in Formosa province, like 70% government employees. So he's like, and they rely on these transfers. And Milei's like, nope, I'm not going to give you the transfers. And they're like, wow. And he's like, I'll let you tax. And his next thing he did was like, I'll let you tax and collect your own money, because that's a lot. Like income taxes are not allowed in the provinces and certain taxes. And he's like, I'll let you collect your own taxes, but you're going to have to pass my laws. You're going to have to pass my laws. And so that was the thing that was the rub in. Some of the what happened in the province after he cut the transfers was hilarious. One of the governors threatened to cut off all oil to the country. One of the governors in La Rioja, which is on the northwest side, it's wine country, wanted to print his own money. And it failed within like 3 days. Is hilarious because nobody would accept it, because he couldn't pay the public employees, so they ended up defaulting. So this is what Milei has been doing, and tons of pressure, because for a while every single governor but one was against Milei, and for a while it almost looked like the walls were closing in on Milei, but he is so crafty and was able to basically outmaneuver his enemies.
Well, it's wild because when you think of a country that has done so much wrong for so long of a period of time, like people don't understand, how many times they've defaulted, how much inflation they've had, like how just like absolutely brutal this country has been over
Right.
the last hundred some odd years. And it's like, how do you change that? Because as you said, like everybody is dependent on this. If you're hiring your wife and your mistress and their family and everybody's family and your, like I said, your dog, like, you're really dependent on this broken, cancerous system just to be able to survive. So now you start cutting all these things. It's like a massive shock to the system.
Absolutely. Some of the good things that he did, though, was he cut out the stuff that was, I mean, the discretionary transfers obviously hurt, but a lot of the other things that Milei cut out were just pure waste, like welfare to people that have yachts, like people that aren't working. Now, that's still going to have an effect in the economy because those people, whatever, but so yes, their economy is in a recession right now. I think their activity is dropping 3 or 4%. But if you look at how much government he's cutting, it's actually doesn't sound that bad. So
The hope would be that these government employees go out there and get a real job and do something
right.
productive and actually add to the value of society, be a productive member of humanity, and stop being leeches. But I think that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow.
It is, but when you have 230% inflation, that is the pill that a lot of people want to swallow. And there are, like I said, the Milei calls them a caste, and there's this, and it's a real caste. So if you look at Argentina, the last 40 years, they have the same union leaders, and they're all millionaires. They have the same business leaders. They're all millionaires. They're all rich. The government protects them. Doesn't the Argentina people don't understand? It's a prison. It's an economic prison. So the government protects the business leaders, and they're the same. They're exactly the same. And it's actually somebody in Milei's government has said one of their goals is to basically bankrupt these people. So because they're complete crony capitalists that rely on a closed economy, not allowing any outside people. I mean, Argentina doesn't allow you to import or export without government permission. People don't like. There's also an export tax. If you export, there's an export tax. I know people in my family have been ruined by these restrictions, and this is how you go from a wealthy country to a poor one. And it was Christina Kirchner that put on the thief that put on these restrictions. So that is Milei's goal, is to open up the economy so people can import and export freely.
Do you think he's going to succeed with that?
Yeah, so he's making there's some interesting things. I think that if you're following the situation at all, he passed a couple weeks ago. He did pass. It was a lighter version of his omnibus law, but this will help him to get a lot more what he's done. It will it's a law that it gives incentives to actually having more investment in Argentina. They're going to privatize quite a few of they have, I think, 41 Soviet style government businesses that are run by the government. And these are just pure loss leaders. I mean, they lose billions of dollars. And for example, in 2007, I believe it was the Kirchner government. If you don't know, they're the crime family that's ran Argentina for the last 20 years. Basically, since the start of the century, they're extremely powerful. They got caught stealing billions of dollars, which has hurt them a lot, and the economy fell apart. That hurt them a lot. But they nationalized Argentina's airline, Argentina Airlines, and in 2007, and since then it's lost $9 billion that the taxpayers had to subsidize. So, and it's like business after business like this. And Milei is like, I'm going to privatize all of this. He wants to do it in a very fair way, right? That he's not just giving it to people, etc. But
hopefully they don't have the same type of oligarch situation like they did when the breakup of the USSR or these countries when it was just cronyism and they just took entire industries, just carved them up and gave them off to their friends. Exactly.
That's not what he wants to do. In fact, Argentina Airlines he's considering selling it to the employees almost for free and being like, we're just not going to subsidize you. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that seems like, I mean, politically, that might be a smart thing. I mean, when it's losing $9 billion, it's political like that, you know, and it's funny, the unions are all against this. But it's like, you're going to actually own the business. Like, why would you be against this? Because they can't, they have so many employees per airplane. It's the largest one in the entire world to actually have to fire people and stuff like that. So that's part of it. What else? Argentina has a lot of plants, and this allows him to fire more people in the government. So fire more people, abolish more. So that's what this law does. So, and it also allows them to free up the labor market because the labor market is awful in Argentina. So given all of this, he wants to start lowering all of the restrictions on like the export taxes. One of the problems with it with Argentina is that's one of the only taxes they make any money, is because the farmers, Argentina is one of the best farming lands in the whole country. It has, if you've been there, the Pampas. I'm from Illinois, central Illinois, and it looks like Illinois. It looks like they have just massive farms, and it could feed over 400 million people. And instead, Argentina actually imports food because of the socialism. That's how bad the situation is. But exporting is one of the only ways they collect taxes. So Milei has to get the government to a small enough size that they can actually cut those taxes. And that's what he already said he was going to do once this was passed. But one of the issues is all tax cuts or increases has to go through the Congress. So he has to get all of it to the Congress. So that's the next challenge, to open up the economy. And he actually already has. There's a lot of ways he's deregulated. He has open skies in Argentina. There's a lot of ways that the economy is already much freer because of his deregulatory DNU that has allowed their economy more free. It just takes time. And one of the other things is just the confidence for businesses, the confidence to invest. You need confidence in the future that Milei won't be toppled, that he will be able to get his stuff through. And that's just something that over time, once they see that he's more established, he's not going to get cooed, especially if his party wins in 2025, which it looks like it's going to. I think more people will start investing in Argentina. And yeah, and yes, and he wants to get rid of all of the restrictions, but he has to go through Congress.
It's interesting. Like from my point of view, okay, so my main business is helping people move to another country, their money, their wealth. We do all the wealth protection in another country. And I have clients sometimes who come to me and they're like, well, what do you think about Argentina? Like, why aren't you moving people to Argentina? And it's like, I'm kind of in the wait and see type of mode. Like, I
Right.
love Milei. I think he's rad. Like, he's making amazing changes. But as you said, he's been there for 6 months. Like, I'm a little bit nervous. What happens if they come for him? Like, I mean, really come for him. Like, we're talking assassination. We're talking some really dark things that could happen, even if he succeeds. So it's like, let's just give him a little bit of time to make some changes. Because am I going to take the majority of my private clients are dentists and lawyers and doctors and small business owners and people who are retiring and stuff like that. Am I going to pick them up? Am I going to pick up my dentist from Texas and move him down to Argentina because Milei's been in for 6 months? I think that's a little bit irresponsible of me at this point. So I'm kind of in this wait and
Right.
see and follow along thing. And I'm here to support and share the word. And I want more libertarian people out there spreading good ideas and deregulation and lower taxes and smaller government, as small as possible. But I want to see it happen first, and then I think I will be moving into this space and helping more clients. And I fully reserve the right to change my opinion at any time. And as things progress in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, absolutely, I could see this being a really viable option for a lot of people. But I just kind of am on the sidelines and watching at this point.
Oh, I totally agree. And there are people, their stock market and their bonds have just surged since Milei has been elected. Those are doing very well. There are people that are taking that risk, including me. But it is contingent on how successful he's going to be. Now he got his legislation passed. That's going to help a lot. Because he's going to be able to cut spending more, cut government spending more. And the people are still they really like Milei in Argentina. So he's more popular now than he was when he was elected. So there are some really positive things going on in Argentina that bode well. But right, if you're going to move there, you got to be very careful. That's why people are waiting and seeing. Let's say he gets clobbered if he gets clobbered in the midterm election somehow, they're going to impeach him. No doubt. Like, for example, if the Kirchners take more seats, and they win, he's going to be impeached. There's no doubt about it. So it doesn't look like that's happening. The polls show that his party is doing extremely well, like beyond expectations, but it's a possibility. So, I mean, they're literally trying to coup him all the time. There are I wouldn't call what do you call the orange revolutions or whatever.
Color revolution.
There are some of those type of things happening in the country. Every once in a while, some very kind of strange large protests. One was over cutting education spending for the colleges, which wasn't even happening. So,
well, I saw a very weird video come out of Argentina recently where there were the protesters and they were going crazy. And then it was put on by the police, and there was like legit police brutality. And then it was like all set to like heavy metal, like death metal or something like that. And it was basically celebrating this police brutality. But then the protesters looked like a bunch of a-holes as well. So
right.
The whole thing was very bizarre.
Yeah, so that was actually the day his lay basis was being promoted. And some things about Argentina that are you'll find crazy is the government gives the previous government, and they did this for political power, used to give all of for example, the welfare aid to certain people, and then those people would give them out. So they would give them to certain groups, and then those groups would just give them out. And can you imagine the corruption that this caused? So this was they would do things like, okay, if you don't march with us, we're not going to give you your welfare, your social programs. If you don't riot, you don't do. So with the last 4 years, there's like multiple times a week, these people would be rioting in the streets, burning tires, blocking traffic. And that's one of the problems with Buenos Aires is their biggest city and their capital. They would be constantly protesting in Buenos Aires and making business impossible. And they would do this multiple times a week. And so Milei's like, you're not going to block the streets. You can protest on the sidewalks. You're not going to block the streets. And if you block the streets, we're going to cut your welfare. And this is what happened. While these groups during the lay bases started to get very violent, and they started to damage businesses and topple cars and take the streets. And that's what you saw is they actually got really close to the Congress building. So it looks bad, but it was actually brought on by the communists. They weren't just going after them. These people took the streets and were destroying cars, destroying property. So because they were so mad that the Milei's bill was going to be passed.
It's crazy. What about with the WEF? So when I first started talking about Milei and writing any articles about this was before his presidency. A lot of people were sending me hate mail and going, don't you know that he's just a WEF spy and he's going to be coming in here and putting globalist technocratic agenda on everything? And then recently he did another appearance at the WEF, which was hilarious to watch because it was like, who let him on the stage? Like, what were you guys thinking? I watched the whole speech and I was like, that was amazing. Walk us through a little bit about the history of the WEF and their association with Milei.
Well, the WEF was started a few decades ago, and it was trying to be this technocratic, build political influence, and they have this like technocratic, global, almost communist movement. And over time, they've added more and more people to the club, and what they do is they invite people like Milei to their groups, and they try to influence them. What happened, what you're referring to, what people talk about is Milei in 2014 went to the WEF, but Milei wasn't and the WEF back in 2014, but very few people knew it was nefarious. Very few people knew about it at all. I was listening to Tom Woods every single day back then, and I was super into the podcasting and reading game, and I never heard about the WEF. I didn't know it was nefarious at all. So I believe it was, but I just didn't know about it. So Milei was a prominent economist, had published 50 peer-reviewed papers. He was a chief economist at a major corporation. And he was one of the leaders on like economic growth in Argentina. But he was not a libertarian. Milei actually became a libertarian leading up to the WEF, which is wild. I know the guy that helped make him more libertarian. It was Jorge Trucco translating the book Market for Liberty and giving it to Milei. And he's like, wow. And Milei actually started reading Rothbard. But so he was going to give a speech at the WEF because he's a part of this major corporation. It was coming to Panama near him and where you live, or right. And so he got an invitation, and in the process of leading up to his speech, which was on demographics and growth, he learned about the hockey stick, as we know, like how the economy grew like crazy after the 1800s. And Milei got 2 masters in Argentina and didn't know about the hockey stick. He didn't know about the exponential rise in economic growth. And it was into that process that actually a student gave him Murray Rothbard's Power and Market, if you're familiar. And that's when he started to be converted. And if you actually watch him at the WEF, he's talking bad about communists. He's talking bad about government, schools. You can tell he's already getting this like anti-state feeling because he's talking about how the Kirchner government has a Marxist head of the government. So you could tell his speech was not pro WF at all. It was actually very anti-government, anti what they, and they never invited him back to the WF for 10 years, and he didn't maintain his membership, and he opposed entirely the 2030 agenda, including he doesn't believe climate change is real. So the WF wants more government control over people. Milei is the very opposite. Milei wants more economic freedom. He said he wants to lead the world in economic freedom. He wants people to be able to start businesses and use the currency they want. He doesn't want a centralized currency. So he's going in the exact opposite. In fact, his legislation basically opened up the oil and gas market in Argentina. They're deregulating the oil and gas market. So that's not exactly what you would want if you were the WF. So it's something that he showed up there, and because he's on their website, if you ever show up to the WEF, you're always on their website. Just how it is, and that's how and one of the ways they influence pedal, and so people caught on that he was on their website, and therefore they assumed he was a WEF member stooge when he's the biggest opponent to Agenda 2030. Argentina just got out of that WHO pandemic treaty. They refused to join that. So these are all things that I don't know. I think they're exaggerated. You can actually find a lot of decent people on their website. If you just go there once, give one speech like Milei did for an hour, you're on their website. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And when he gave it to when he went there the second time, and if you're an elected president, they will pretty much allow you to speak there. They allowed Bolsonaro to speak there. They allowed Trump to speak there. Argentina is one of the bigger countries in the world, size wise and economy wise. It's not terrible. So they allowed Milei to speak there, and Milei basically said "F you" to them.
He just destroyed them in that speech. And
Right.
for anybody who's listening, I recommend going and watching the original and just reading the subtitles, or it's amazing to watch.